do that. So maybe this sounds a little bit better. I don't know. So we're just gonna go and we're just gonna go going through. So anyway, Virgo and Pisces are two very interesting zodiac signs, even though they are at opposite ends of the zodiac. And I could say that maybe all the signs of the zodiac are really interesting, but there's always deep information for us to discover in each of the 12 zodiac signs. They're not just personalities, they're not just a sun sign or memes, which are fun, don't get me wrong, but I love Virgo because it has such an attention to detail. It has very specific needs. Maybe I need a new microphone. Maybe that's going to be my next purchase. We have, with Virgo, we have very clear needs over the next 6 months. We need to pay attention to the details. We need to clean things out. We need to organize. We need to look at what is working and what is not working. Virgo governs over our day-to-day lives. You get up, you take the dog for a walk, you have some coffee, you brush your teeth, you eat your vegetables, you take your vitamins, you go to work, you have your routine, you have your commute, all these little things that seem quite mundane, but they really build the structure and flow of our lives on a day-to-day level. And Virgo can talk about, well, where are we putting our focus? Where are we putting our priority? And Virgo is saying to us, we need to really look at our priorities over the next 6 months. And even if you're scratching your head and thinking, but I don't have anything in Virgo, and I said this in sort of that first attempt that I did before restarting this, you know, even if you're born in the 1960s, you do have Virgo, you have Pluto and Uranus in Virgo, so you definitely have something in Virgo. But for the rest of us, even if you have nothing in Virgo, that energy represents a very key part of the zodiac. So we have Pisces at the end of the zodiac. It is the last sign of the zodiac. And we're all symbolically trying to get to Pisces. It represents the end of a cycle, the end of this great big wheel of life, whether this is a day, whether this is a year, whether this is the entirety of all of your lifetimes. And even if you're scratching your head and thinking, but I don't have anything in Pisces, Katie, again, it's a symbolic step in this wheel of life. And that's what the zodiac is. It's the wheel of life. So how do we get to Pisces? We need to practice, 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 to sort of take the old joke about Carnegie Hall. How do we get to Pisces? We need to do Virgo. We need to reach for Pisces through Virgo. We need to say to ourselves, I need to work on myself, or I need to make this situation better. What do I need to do? And so it is that desire to better our lives that can pull us up towards Pisces. But in order to fully step into Pisces, which is a sign that's ruled by Jupiter, we have to let go. So before I get too far into this, because I did this whole introduction in the first attempt of this video, again, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium located here in the rolling hills of central Maryland. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. I could do a whole love letter to the zodiac. I love the zodiac. It is so rich, it is so complex, it has so many deep secrets that are sort of hiding in plain sight, and it's the zodiac that can really give us a deeper framework and a deeper understanding for the world around us and even the world within us. I said this last week, and this could have been on the part that was speeding up and glitching, but you know, Pisces represents the return to unity. Last sign of the zodiac, it's water. It's not the water, the water that you can drink. It's not emotional water. It's not the water of connection or even intimacy, Scorpio. It is the cosmic water. It is the waters that take us out of this life and prepare us for something new. There is a depth to Pisces that I think very often in popular astrology gets lost. And I really want to underscore some of these points about Pisces and even Virgo, because we have Saturn in Pisces. and Saturn's going to be in Pisces for the next 4.5 months. This is the last stretch of Saturn in Pisces for the next 30 years. Yes, you heard me correctly, 30 years, because Saturn takes 30 years, 29 and a half, if we're being precise, if we're being Virgo, 29 and a half years to go through the zodiac. And so Saturn's march, so to speak, sign by sign by sign, while it does take 30 years or 29 and a half years, it says that in order to go to the next level, which is the next sign, we have to perfect the sign that we are in. So within the last few years, I could go all the way back to say, end of 2017, 2018, Saturn has been in Capricorn all the way up to 2020, then it went into Aquarius 2020 all the way up to 2023, and then it went into Pisces. So within the last 7-8 years, we've really been working through the last few signs of the zodiac. And these are signs that don't talk about the I and the individual. They talk about the we, the collective, the community, the things that we build, our organizations, our rules, our governance. But when we get to Pisces, it's a sign that we can't touch. We can't understand Pisces at the level of the intellect, Aquarius. But Aquarius does support us as we take that step into Pisces. So we have work to do over the next six months, and that work is twofold. It is Virgo. It is the how do you do your day-to-day life? What do you put your focus and priorities on? Is this a time for you to really look at your work, or for you to look at health and wellness, the foods you eat, the things that you do? Is this about purity? And I put that in air quotes because that word can mean a lot of different things. And really trying to bring purity to your life, to clean out the things that don't support you, that won't get you, so to speak, to Pisces. Is it about really creating rituals and looking at like how you do your day-to-day life? Like, you know what? Like, I really want to make sure that I'm getting a walk in, I'm doing this, I'm drinking my smoothie or my green juice or whatever it is that will be helpful on a physical level to your life. But the Pisces side of it says that we need to be integrated. We need to be grounded before we can do Pisces. We need that, or we also need the rituals in Virgo to help us to really open up to the depths of Pisces. So it's just to help you as much as I can. It's really to help you to integrate some of this deeper work and deeper symbology and archetypes and energy that we're all going to be navigating personally and collectively as we go into February of 2026. Again, that represents the end of the cycle. So how do we get to Pisces? We have to go through Virgo. We have to really take it step by step by step. And even though the sun has moved on, the sun is now in Libra, and it's a different element. It's air, it's connection, it's relationship, it's movement, it's ideas, it's exchange, it's sharing. This is the movement and the exchange and the sharing, maybe even the connection to people, that's going to be the next step on our way to Pisces. Because as Saturn wraps up its time in Pisces, we've come to the end of a great journey. We will start to see certain chapters of our lives or certain stories of our life begin to come to an end. And this is all preparing us for that next chapter, especially when Saturn gets back into Aries on February 13th or 14th, depending on where you are in the world. So for me, I've been saying this, when I look ahead at the year, I look at the eclipses, I look at Saturn, and that tells me that, in the case of September was going to be a big month. Maybe nothing happened for you, but it is to start to listen, to watch, to observe, to feel what is beginning to come into your radar. To back up for a second, we had June and July and August, and these were 3 months where Saturn was in Aries. So those are 3 months that were trying to show us something. Maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not obvious. Maybe that's the beauty of astrology, is that it makes sense in hindsight. And it's for us to see what was beginning to come into our lives that we'll return to in some way, symbolically or as a thread of a story, as we go into 2026. So this week we don't have big aspects, and sometimes we need that time to integrate. For example, the moon is doing most of the talking this week. We've got the moon going through Capricorn through the beginning of the week. This is mostly a part of the chart that's about really looking towards the future. Capricorn, kind of like Virgo, they're both earth signs, is to really map out, plan, strategize, work. And Capricorn is always about putting the work in, putting the time in. Because Capricorn, like its ruling planet, Saturn, reminds us that things take time. Whether it's 3 years, whether it's 15 years, whether it's 29 and a half years. And that's how we build our lives in these different cycles, like rings of time, like rings of Saturn. So we've got Moon in Capricorn towards the first half of this week. Then I think it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we have the moon in Aquarius, also ruled by Saturn. But Aquarius, like Libra, is air. So it's a little bit of a different energy towards the end of the week. It's more social, it's more connective, it's more intellectual, it's about social issues, bigger picture. Aquarius is the sign of humanity. And then we get towards the weekend, and then the moon is in Pisces. So it's going to bring us all the way to the end of the zodiac, and it just underscores some of the things I was saying in this introduction. We need to really look at both Virgo and Pisces, because they are the big focal points, astrologically speaking, as we go into the beginning of 2026. Again, we only have four and a half months of Saturn in Pisces. It's for all of you, and I wrote, it's in my show notes. It's a Saturn in Pisces sign by sign. You can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com, and that sort of will refresh you of what this time in your life is about. Even when we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, I will refresh you of what this time is about for you. We do have one sort of relatively significant aspect this week, although it's a Mercury aspect. So Mercury aspects typically are a little bit more ephemeral. They move quickly, but it is Mercury square Jupiter on October 1st, and Mercury does rule that September 21st solar eclipse in Virgo. Jupiter does rule the other lunar eclipse that we had on September 7th. These are two planets that together really can, on one hand of things, help us to really find inspiration, to look beyond our day-to-day, to discover philosophy, truth, meaning, to seek, to explore. But there is the other side of Mercury and Jupiter. It's where we really can get stuck in our opinions, our points of view. So there might be some friction points this week, especially about what we believe in, what we stand for. How do we navigate different points of view? And maybe it's not that. Maybe it's about some of these bigger questions about how do we get to Virgo? How do we get to Pisces? I mean, practice, practice, practice. So I think on some level, I feel on some level that this is a week where these eclipse themes are really beginning to integrate more. And again, it's for you to listen for them and how they're showing up for you in your own lives. As you know, it is October on Wednesday, and I don't know how on earth it's October. My brain is somewhere in late June. Anyway. So it's going to be October, and unlike eclipse season, October doesn't have those sort of big markers like September did. We will have a rather spicy Aries full moon on October 6th, so this will be next Monday. We'll talk about this next Monday more. This full moon is not an eclipse, but it is the full moon that follows a solar eclipse. So it sort of, in a way, takes the banner of an eclipse. And it is an Aries full moon, so Aries is typically about action. It's about leadership, individuality. It's about how we move forward, our desires, our wants. The thing that makes it spicy is that Mars is presently in Scorpio. So Scorpio receives the energy of the full moon. And Scorpio, especially Mars and Scorpio, it doesn't really sort of sugarcoat. It goes right to the core, right to the heart. This is a great new moon if you really want to, let's say, move forward on something, but you want to see what's in the way. And sometimes we are the ones that are in the way. It's bringing up a lot of emotions, a lot of psychological themes, themes about trust, power, control, vulnerability, but true to Scorpio form. And I'm saying this as a Scorpio. It is a sign that it's sort of known, at least classically speaking, for being a sign of wealth, of material wealth. But I think the real wealth of Scorpio is the spiritual wealth. When we do the work, when we make the change, the things that cannot be unchanged, and in a good way, and they come with us through the rest of our lives. And that's always our currency. That's always our wealth, the things that we've really truly worked on and made that change. So it's just a full moon to watch, no worries. But if, let's say, tempers are getting a little testy, if people are getting a little bit spicy, it's could be the energies around the full moon. And that's the thing about full moons and even lunar eclipses. But full moons, they do bring up a lot of psychic, emotional material. So not a quiet start to next week, but we'll talk about that when we get to next week. Um, Also, this week on October 1st, this is completely unrelated to everything that I've been talking about. I'm going to do a free webinar at 12 p.m. Eastern. So, yes, the middle of the day, for 1 hour. It is an introduction to energetic sciences because I have this workshop that's coming up this weekend, October 4th and 5th, which is about energy, consciousness, and something called the weft, which is the sixth element. And so in this workshop, we're going to learn about energy, both the energy that you can touch, but also the energy that is subtle energy. We're going to learn about the world around us and our sixth sense, and how the mechanics of our sixth sense, and how to open our sixth sense that helps us to connect us to the greater whole. The introduction that I'm doing, I've already done a few introductions at this point. I did one in May, I did one in January, I did one last September, but this will be a free introduction. And the link is in the show notes. It is being hosted by merciaacademy.com, so it's free, but it's free with registration. And we will not only learn about these bigger concepts about the universe and where we come from and our origins, but also this idea of the weft. And we will do a meditation at the end to begin to shift our consciousness, to start that process of opening up to the subtle realms and the energy that we cannot see with our naked eye, but we can feel with our hands. So both those links are in the show notes for this work, or you can go to merciaacademy.com. merciaacademy.com, I think it's .ch, but the link is in the show notes. Sorry about that. The link is in the show notes. You can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. So let's look at the astrology for this week. Like I said, we are mostly integrating a lot of the big shifts and the psychic shifts and changes that happened in September. And we might be feeling this Aries full moon that is not until October 6th, so next Monday, but it might be starting to creep in because it's hitting on some testy buttons. So let's start with Aries. So Aries, it's not until next Monday, but there's kind of an interesting full moon that I want to put on your radar. October 6th, there will be an Aries full moon at 14 degrees. Yes, 14 degrees of Aries. And this full moon puts you in the spotlight. So around this time each year, there is a full moon in Aries. What's interesting is that over the past few years, we actually had eclipses in Aries and Libra. So this is not an eclipse, but it can kind of, my dog like lays down and shakes the screen. They can kind of evoke some of the events and the storylines that were happening in 2023 or 2024 and into 5, maybe 2023 as well. So This full moon puts you in the spotlight, and it's to sort of see like what's coming up as we get closer and closer to October 6th, Monday. Then there's Mars. Mars is your planet and it's in Scorpio at the moment. So that's kind of an intense place for your planet to be, because it really puts the energy and focus of your life at the moment in your inner world, your inner life, your psyche. Pisces, Scorpio is a sign that takes you into the psyche, but also into themes about trust, vulnerability, power, and control. With this full moon that's coming up, that's putting you in the spotlight, and it's sending the energy back towards Mars and Scorpio, which is your eighth. This is saying that something needs to transform. And I say needs to, and I probably say should, even though I don't like to say should as a hardcore underscore should as an astrologer. But typically, when we have a big Scorpio placement in the narrative, like something wants to change, something wants to transform. So it is to look at yourself, it is to look at what's coming up, it is to face whatever's within you, that sort of fear, that insecurity. We all have it, we're human beings, because that is going to help you to open up for these new beginnings, especially as we get into 2026 and Saturn gets back into Aries. In the meantime, don't forget you've got 4.5 more months of Saturn and Pisces. I know you're like ticking the days off your calendar, because you're coming to the end of a great cycle in your life. Like, use it. Don't sort of be like, can't wait to get towards February when Saturn gets back into Aries. Like, use this time to really clear, prepare, organize, because 2025, but more like 2026 and 7, is such a new time in your life. Taurus. Taurus. So Venus is your planet, and Venus is in Virgo at the moment. It is building its way to an opposition to Saturn, but that's not going to be until I think the end of next week. But what that means for you right now is that as you get throughout this week, as you get into next week, you've got Saturn to kind of contend with. Saturn is this planet. As much as I love Saturn, Saturn is like, you need to get your stuff together. You need to organize, you need to blah 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 blah, whatever it is, you know your life. But Saturn at the same time, as much as it is about really holding us accountable, it can even mark times of personal transitions, milestones, and achievements. So it is to see what are these achievements, what are these milestones, what is it that's coming up into your life as you go into next week. It could be a point of maturity. It could be like you get like a pat on the back, like you're doing a great job, Taurus. But it is to really continue, especially with Venus and Virgo, to push yourself to be precise, push yourself to clean out, push yourself to be on time, and to organize your day accordingly, because that's really, especially with that eclipse that we just had in Virgo, that's the name of the game into 2026. Um, this week, we it's not until actually next week, next Monday, we will have a lunar eclipse in Aries. And Aries for you, Taurus, represents your 12th. This is the time of year that's typically about cleaning out, releasing. When we have eclipses in the 12th, it's either very spiritual or very deep, or really looking at our, trying to answer the best we can existential questions, or it's a time where something needs to leave. That's the part of life. Something needs to leave so something else can come in. So you can use this time to your advantage. I know somebody that, who's a Taurus, she's like cleaning out things right now. It's sort of this, it's not spring cleaning, it's fall cleaning or autumn cleaning. And maybe that's kind of how you want to use this energy as you go into the weekend, as you go into next week. It's like to really clean out and to prepare for new things to come into your life. Um, Gemini. Gemini. So Mercury is your planet, and this week Mercury is still in Libra, and it is making what's called a square to Jupiter, but I'll come back to that. So for you, Libra is an air sign. Libra is something called your fifth sign. It's time for you to really come back to the things that light you up, give you joy, give you passion, make you creative, really help you to express who you are. The thing that I wanted to say about Mercury square Jupiter, although it might kind of come and go, is that it's really getting into these questions about value and worth, and maybe even your own self-worth and value, or how you see yourself, or maybe even how others see you. But sometimes, and I'm saying this because you're a Gemini or a Gemini rising, when Mercury is your planet, you typically have things to say. When Mercury is square Jupiter, you just need to be careful that you're not, kind of shooting your mouth off, so to speak. And got really bright suddenly. And so it's just to sort of lean into your diplomacy and the best that you can, because usually when Mercury and Jupiter, it's like you got ideas, you got opinions, you got points of view. So of course there's good ways and maybe not so helpful ways to navigate that. We are just a couple weeks off of a solar eclipse. We are even coming up to a month after that lunar eclipse of September 7th as we get to the end of this week. And it's just to take stock, because these were big eclipses in your astrology. What this means is that on some level, and of course you are all different people living different lives, but something has turned up the volume in your life. And so to have, for example, a solar eclipse in Virgo, like we did a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago, it says that something about the next 6 months puts the major focus on family, home, where you live, your address, both literal address and your inner address within. This is also a time where family or the past or memories could be a focal point, but it's playing off that lunar eclipse that we had on September 7th in your career sign of Pisces. To have a lunar eclipse in your career sign, and you did have a lunar eclipse back in September of 2024, it's happening in the most public place in your astrology. Things are happening, even if you're like, but Katie, nothing's happening. But like, your life is pivoting on some sort of axis. And it's to begin to see how that is relevant to your life, because the thing that is different between now and 2024, when we had that last eclipse in Pisces, is that Uranus is now in Gemini. And so this is the early stages or parts of the story where Gemini, a lot of things are going to begin to change and reinvent. You have this visitor to your sign that will be there, except for November to April, but it will be there for the next few years. So maybe you're feeling this huge urge to make a change, to go off in a different direction, to move, or to make a change in your professional life. And that could be where a lot of this energy is being seated in your life right now. Cancer. Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and the moon is going from Capricorn all the way to Pisces this week. Well, first let's start with the moon, because you are ruled by the moon. And we just had a couple of eclipses. We had the solar eclipse in particular on September 21st. Because the moon is your planet, and we need the moon to make an eclipse, it's you're kind of in a way feeling the eclipse. So it's just to take stock, like what's coming up in your life, what's changing. Maybe you're thinking nothing's changing, like maybe you're moving, maybe you're pivoting, maybe it's just a lot of emotions that are coming up, but that energy is reverberating through your life even into October. Then we have, let's say, the moon going through Capricorn through the first few days of this week. Capricorn is your sign of relationships, partnerships, connections. It's about other people and socialization as you start the week. And then you get into the middle of the week, the moon goes into Aquarius, which is your eighth. Deeper themes about vulnerability, trust, power, control, and intimacy, perhaps even financial themes as well. And then you close out the week with the moon going into Pisces, your ninth sign. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you think is true? What's your faith? What's your conviction? Could be higher education, it could be travel. So it's for you to see what is the narrative that's coming up for you. But as the moon goes back into Pisces, it's first time since that lunar eclipse of September 7th, it is joining up with Saturn, I think by the end of the weekend. This could be a time, and it's to sort of see how this is relevant for you, especially this weekend, like where you're sort of reaching the end of some sort of chapter, some sort of cycle. And the moon and Saturn really mark these major milestones and chapters in our lives. It could be the start of a relationship, it could be a pregnancy, it could be a move, it could be a career change. But it's to get that lens of what is coming up for you with the moon and Saturn coming together. By and large, and I said this last week, if you could have heard me, by and large, this lunar eclipse and solar eclipse were very much either about education or really opening up your curiosity, opening up your mind, opening up to different points of view, a lot of movement in your life, proverbially, I don't know, maybe literally as well. And these 2 points are really, Virgo Pisces, are really the focal point as you go into 2026. So continue to open up your curiosity, focus on your education, open up to new horizons, new points of views, learn, get philosophical. But I think, again, with Saturn up in your ninth, you're really needing to get more concrete about what you believe in and what you stand for. Um, Leo. Leo, so the sun is your planet, and the sun is in Libra right now. And so Libra represents something called your third sign. It sort of adds this air to your Leo fire. It could be a lot of movement and travel and trips and places to go, people to see, things to do. It could be very social time for you. But that said, we have just, as of a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, we've just had a solar eclipse. And that solar eclipse is in your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security. Money, or just money resources, our material lives as sort of a general space, that's going to be a big focus and priority for you for the next 6 months. Whether you are working hard to create more material stability and security for yourself, whether you are looking at your income and like, oh my gosh, or you're like, I need to create a budget, or I want to purchase my first home, or I want to make investments. Of course, it's going to be relevant to your own life and your own standing, but this is where a lot of the, let's say, the themes are going to be for the next 6 months. So Virgo, that Virgo eclipse, even though it's Libra season, it's really, there's some movement and needing to connect, perhaps with other people, or need to get new perspectives and new ideas. That's building upon whatever seeds that were planted with this eclipse. We will have, it will be next week on the 6th, we're going to have an Aries full moon, and Aries is a fire sign just like you. And so maybe as you start the week, you're kind of fired up. Aries for you is a sign that is about, like, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you think is true? What is your faith? Where's that spark? Where's that flame? How do you inspire and empower and motivate people? So it's a very powerful full moon, but it's also getting into, with Mars. Mars is down in your fourth sign of home and family. Stuff that's really close to the gut, so to speak. Your emotions, your the emotional core, and maybe you need to speak from the heart. Maybe you need to share something. Maybe you need to release something, and by speaking about it, sharing about it, that you just don't want to hold on to it anymore. So that said, that's kind of like where the big focus is happening at the moment for you, Leo. But it's just to really continue to take practical measures and steps to look at money, income, material stability and security, and the resources that you have available to you, and even your own self-worth and value. Um, Virgo. Virgo. So how are we doing, Virgo? Like, it is a check in because we just, as of a week and a half ago, we just had that solar eclipse in Virgo at 29 degrees. Again, I've said this before. If your birthday was on the 22nd, the 21st, even the 20th, plus or minus, it's gonna be a big new year for you. And I know I've had this conversation with some clients, and I'm like, well, go back to 2006, and they all scratch their heads like, why 2006? Because 2006, on the I think it was the 22nd of September, there was a solar eclipse also at 29 degrees of Virgo. So The difference between now and then is that the planets are in different places in the sky. Like back then we had Pluto and Sagittarius, but it is an eclipse that's hitting the same point, and especially your own planets around that same point. So even if your birthday was not on the 21st or 22nd, it is a big time to be a Virgo. If you're saying, like, you know what, Katie, I just don't know, I don't see it, great, fine. But it is to see what is the tone, the focus over the next 6 months, because where the energy is focused is Virgo. You're a Virgo, and if you're a Virgo sun, it's quite possible that you have other planets in Virgo as well. And so the energy is saying it's time for a new beginning. It's time for a reset. It's time to clean things out. You're a Virgo. You restructure, reorganize, streamline, reprioritize. And with that lunar eclipse that we had on September 7th, yes, these have passed, but they have woven themselves into the fabric of your life, and especially over the next 6 months. So relationships, Pisces is your relationship sign, is also a focal point for the next 6 months. And especially this week, the moon will get back to Pisces. Has not been in Pisces since the eclipse of September 7th, probably September 8th. And this lunar eclipse was really putting the spotlight in your sign of relationships and connections and socialization. Sometimes when the moon comes back around, we're like, oh, that's what this eclipse is about. But even if it's not very event oriented, it's really thematic, and it's really building a big story in your life in the moment. Like your life is pivoting. We just don't know. We have to sort of see where things are going. Um, that said, this will be next week, but we will have a full moon in Virgo. This will be Virgo, your Virgo. It'll be a full moon in Aries on October 6th, and this full moon will be in something called your 8th. So as you kind of go into the weekend and you go into the next week, there may be a lot of emotions coming up. These are themes that are about intimacy, trust, vulnerability, power, control, needing to look at yourself, needing to make some changes, needing to make some transformations. And this is all, I think, maybe contingent upon relationships. But I'm saying this because it's kind of a spicy full moon. If you're sort of feeling it as you go into the weekend, just get grounded, get centered, be present with yourself, and be present with the emotions that are coming up in addition. Libra, happy birthday, Libra. So the sun is now in your sign. It's been in your sign since September, I think it was 22nd. And Libra, this season, I know we had eclipses recently, and I think it's worth saying that in 2023 and 4 and into the beginning of 5, you had eclipses in Libra and Aries, your relationship sign. So the universe has shifted, and the eclipses are no longer in your sign, but they are in something called your 6th and your 12th. So for you, Libra, that Virgo solar eclipse that we just had a week and a half ago was in your 12th sign. The 12th then is your focus for the next 6 months. What's the 12th? In our astrology, we have a space for each domain of life. But when we get to spaces like the 10th, the 11th, we're coming to our public lives, our external lives, our friends, our community, our career. But the 12th represents something that is inherently outside of this world. It is our spirituality. It is that inner search. It is to go into some of the most quiet places within. So for you, Libra, how are you feeling this eclipse season? Do you feel a lean towards spirituality, and whatever that word means for you? Do you feel a lean towards going into quiet spaces or retreat or meditation? You had that lunar eclipse September 7th and something called your 6th, which is health and wellness. And this can be both about like this internal health and wellness, but also physical health and wellness. on some level, the next 6 months are about you cleaning up and cleaning out, whatever those words mean for you. If you're like, my life is clean, what are you talking about? I don't mean like clean as some sort of like you're not being clean enough. I mean, what does it mean to really bring organization and precision, to body, mind, and soul, to really feel that your day to day life is aligned with something that feels like a sense of meaning and purpose. The 6th and the 12th are both very understandable, but at the same time, they're not, because at the end of the day, it isn't just about what we do in our day to day lives, it's about what our day to day lives really support and build in our lives. So there's both the real world aspects of the next 6 months for you, but there's both the spiritual and a philosophical and inner search part of the next 6 months for you. Venus, which is your planet, it is in Virgo right now. So Venus is bringing you through the 12th, I think even into next week. Venus gets into Libra on the 13th of October. So we have a couple more weeks of Venus going through Virgo. So sit with this time, because when Venus gets into Libra on the 13th, it symbolically represents a rebirth. But this is the time to get quiet. This is the time to listen, to connect to your intuition, to reconnect to the deepest and most intimate and perhaps even most private parts of yourself. Because the thing about the 12th is that nobody can go in there with you. It is the space that takes you out of this world. It is the space that prepares you for something new. So a lot of deeper, more existential, more spiritual themes are being really activated, and especially as we go into the end of next week, Venus makes an opposition to Saturn. And so it's to sit with this as you go throughout this week and into this weekend, is to sit with this next week. But what does commitment mean to you? What does practice, what does follow through, what does really reaching for a higher version of yourself mean for you? Because the Saturn opposition of the end of next week says you need to take some sort of next big step up in your life. Scorpio. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and as of last week, Mars is now in Scorpio. It's home domain, so this gives you some energies, some verbs, some moxie, some punch. I mean that in the best possible way, because Mars, when it's in our sign, it's like it's ready to go, ready to take action. Mars is not the diplomat. Mars is typically the leader, not also the authority, but Mars is about knowing what your desires are and going after them. So this is building upon you had when, especially when Mars was in Libra September and August, September. It was about coming to the end, excuse me, about coming to the end of a personal cycle, because it's been 2 years since Mars was last in Scorpio. The thing that's different, and I talked about this last week, is that Mars is now talking to Pluto and Aquarius. And Aquarius forms the base and foundation of your chart. So it's like while you're ready to take action, there are some shifts and there are some moves that may or may not be obvious in your life, but Pluto is sort of sitting in the part of your chart that talks about what's supporting everything. And Pluto is saying to you, Scorpio, we are doing things a little bit differently now. We are rotating your life a little bit differently now. That is a bigger conversation for another time. But we just had a solar eclipse in Virgo. We'll continue to talk about this because it really represents where a lot of your energy, your focus, the attention is going to be for the next 6 months. That solar eclipse was in your 11th. It is your friends. It is the communities that you are part of, your social circle, your sense of connection to the whole, social issues, social causes. It is the 11th that is meant to open up our eyes to humanity, to the collective, because it is the opposite of the 5th. The 5th is the I, the ego, the self. It's what I want, my desires. But when you're in the 11th, it's about the wants and desires of the greater whole. So that's where a lot of the attention is happening. And, especially with that Saturn opposition, Saturn in Pisces, your 5th, it is a push and pull about your role in the world, your role in your community, whatever world means to you. Your world could just be, you know, the five houses that are around you, but where's you, and where, you know, what's your role in the world, and how are, especially with Saturn in the fifth, how are you taking a bigger role, or a more authoritative role, in a positive, healthy way, in something. It could be a community, it could be a social issue that you feel called to, a humanitarian theme you feel called to, because that's where a lot of the focus is happening over the next 6 months. Then we have again that Mars in Scorpio, because I wanted to highlight that, because even though this is next week, we are building up to it. There will be an Aries full moon on October 6th. So Aries represents Scorpio's six: work, projects, health, wellness, the things that we need to do on a day-to-day level, a sense of operations, a sense of service, and even how you take care of your physical being. That lunar, not lunar eclipse, it's a full moon. It's not a lunar eclipse, but it is pulling upon eclipse energy. That full moon is in the same sign where Saturn was, June and July and August. And Saturn was trying to show you some things, like you need to get healthier, you need to do this, you need to finish that project, you need to start that project, whatever it is. But this Aries full moon is perhaps starting to say it's time to take action. I wanted to mention this because the energy of that full moon points towards you, because Mars is in Scorpio. So you receive the energy of that full moon. So you're kind of in the spotlight as you go into next week. Maybe you are being given more duties and responsibilities. Maybe you need to demonstrate more leadership. Maybe you need to get positive control in your life and put things in order and do things more healthy. Or maybe it's about really getting moving and starting something, and sort of getting your foot on the gas pedal, so to speak, with Mars and Scorpio. Maybe look towards the weekend as we get closer and closer towards that full moon, and especially as you get into the next week, which we'll talk about. This will be a full moon, to watch. Sagittarius. So, Sagittarius, Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter is still in Cancer. It'll be in Cancer until next July 2026. So, while Sag is typically like, I want to see the world, I want to do things, Cancer is kind of an interesting chapter because it's more focused on home and family. Jupiter has an 11.5 year cycle, so we have to go all the way back to 2013-14 to see where was Jupiter, where was Jupiter last in Cancer. That said, we just, how are you doing, Sagittarius? And I said this to Virgo, and I should have said this to Gemini as well, and I'll definitely say this to Pisces, but it is a big time to be a mutable sign, and Sagittarius is a mutable sign. You just had this solar eclipse a week and a half ago in your career sign. This is the only solar eclipse that you're going to have in your career sign in this cycle of eclipses. Eclipses have a 9 year or slash 18.5 year cycle. So over the next 6 months, something is changing either in your public life, your public reputation, your career, that how people know you as, and whether that is lawyer, candlestick maker, mother, baker, shopper, I don't know, whatever it is the role that you play in the world. This solar eclipse is saying, like, there's a big focus and spotlight on that part of your life. It will be different for each Sagittarius. It's possible that the next 6 months really talk about major milestones. Saturn is back in Pisces as of September 1st. That's in your sign of home and family, roots and foundation. We got Uranus and Gemini, your seventh sign of relationships. But even if we just focused on career and home and family, so these are going to be your major focal points over the next 6 months. So could be changes in job. If you get a new job, you decide to go off in a new direction, you receive recognition for the hard work that you've been doing. You want to get more involved with your community, especially with the Mercury pointing towards your 11th of friends and community. But it's also to focus on your home environment. Saturn is wrapping up for the next 4.5 months, this time that it won't be back in this part of your astrology for 30 years. you have needed to prioritize home and family since 2023, since March of 2023. Maybe you've moved, maybe you needed to focus on an ailing parent, maybe you needed to get your first home, maybe you got married, maybe you started a family, maybe you got divorced, or maybe you started a partnership. But these are the things that really mark the major milestones of our lives. So a lot is kind of on your shoulders at the moment, Sagittarius, whether that's obvious to what's happening in your life right now, whether that is not obvious to what's happening in your life. And if it's not obvious, I think in particular we need to get to December, because in December, Mars will be in Sagittarius. Saturn will be direct on the 27th of September. Mars will make a square to Saturn in the middle of December, and we will be 3 months after the eclipses, 3 months before the next eclipses. So December might be an inflection point for you about this sort of transition and new beginnings in your life. But this is just energy. It's like if you know your priority is home and family, you're like, okay, well maybe I can like focus on that part and really maybe not worry about certain other areas of our lives. But we're coming to the end of a great chapter, because Saturn's going to get out of Pisces in February. It's not going to return to this part of the sky for 30 years. So you're moving and phasing out of this one big story of your life. But I think it's been really about you on some level putting down roots. Um, Capricorn. Capricorn. So Saturn is your planet. And I feel like I'm kind of a broken record saying this, because that's the thing. You're ruled by Saturn, and Saturn just will sit in one area of the sky for the better part of 3 years. So right now, Saturn is back in Pisces as of September 1st. It's got 4.5 months left in Pisces. And so this is the last stretch of some major chapter, because every 3 years Saturn goes to a new sign of the zodiac. And so this is some major chapter in your life. And maybe this has been a major chapter that's been about education. Maybe you've needed to prioritize education. Maybe it's been about teaching something that you know, being a an authority or a leader in something that you have to teach. Maybe for some Capricorns, it's about taking your voice seriously, writing something, speaking something. I think we always forget that this part of the chart also teaches us about the power of choice. And so in your experiences since 2023 is the power of choice and the choices that you're making. And to really, and ultimately Saturn, your ruler, is about mastery, to be the master of our choices that we're making. Because the choices that you are making, especially the ones that are coming within this 4.5 month period until Saturn leaves Pisces, are really setting you up for that next chapter in your life. Because when Saturn gets back into Aries on February the 13th, you're moving into a very different phase of your life, one that is focused, where the priority of the chart is home and family and putting down roots. And perhaps it's taking care of a parent, depending on what age you are. Maybe it's starting a family if you're younger. Or maybe it's to really recreate what home and family you would like that to mean for you, because obviously that's not always easy for some people. So keep in mind that this, even though this time is about education, it's about curiosity, but it's also about choices. And so we just had the solar eclipse, not in Pisces where I find you, Saturn, but I find that solar eclipse in something called your ninth. These two signs, third and ninth, they really inform each other. But the ninth is, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you think is true? What's your faith? What's your truth? What's your conviction? It's not faith of religion, although for some people it is faith, but it could be like, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What do you really stand for? What do you know deep within you is right and wrong? For some Capricorns, the next 6 months are very much focused on education, travel, but also these bigger philosophical questions. Maybe you're writing something, speaking something, saying something, but going back to those choices, I think that's where, the devil are the details, so to speak, with that Virgo eclipse, where whatever choices that you are making, the ones that really mark the next 4 months and take you into that next big chapter and phase of your life, they need to be really in alignment with your convictions, with your truth. It's not because somebody told you that this is the way to go or this is the right choice. It's because you feel it in your heart. The power of the ninth is the power to get us to look outside of ourselves, to want more out of life, to see the world, to learn. So this is more of a philosophical time in your life, and I think that's where a lot of the deeper precision and soul searching and looking within, especially with Saturn and Pisces, is like, don't forget that these choices that you're possibly making, they really need to be rooted in something that you believe in and you stand for. Um, Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet, and Saturn has four oh, English is hard suddenly. 4 months left in Pisces. And so this is by and large, and I know I sound like a broken record, but this is the thing about your ruler being Saturn, is that it will just stay in one part of your astrology for 3 years, 3 years. So, this is just for you to know that you are wrapping up a major chapter of your life that, for some of you, has been very focused on your material life, your material needs, resources, but also what you value. Do you value this? And maybe the things that you valued at the start of 2023 are not what you value right now, because on one hand, we are physical beings. We need to make sure we have a roof over our head. I hope we need to make sure we have food in the kitchen. We should be so lucky. But it's important because we need to make sure that we have the resources to be able to create care and stability and security for our lives. So this is going to be very specific to your own life. You have to sort of see, where have you been asked to make a budget, or to maybe clear things out, and maybe like not spend money here or spend money over here. And maybe it's something else. Maybe it's self-worth and value. Maybe that's been the real work over the past couple of years. So that, even though this eclipse wasn't in your sign, in a way it kind of roped you in, because this solar eclipse that we just had a week and a half ago was in Virgo, which is something called your eighth sign of finance, assets, wealth, estate planning, benefits, legacies, but also the psyche, your inner life, the sometimes the most private parts of yourself, and the parts that you would only share to those that you trust. So this eclipse was opposite Saturn. Saturn represents you symbolically. So in a way, this is an eclipse that's sort of talking about, well, what's truly of value to you. I'll give you an example. Sometimes we have situations in our lives where we know we're right, and we have the choice to fight because it's right, but then you have to sort of weigh the outcome. We have to weigh, well, what do we truly gain? Do we gain the satisfaction of knowing that we're right, or do we fight something that ultimately doesn't help us with our value and worth? So that could be one way, where you're sort of asking yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth it for me to go down this avenue? Does it support me? Does it support my greater whole? We also can't forget, all this is not really about the eclipses, but it's in the mix. Pluto is now in your sign. It's been in and out of your sign since 23, 24, but now it's in your sign. So this is a start of a bigger, sort of tectonic shift in your life, where maybe some of these questions about value and, like, do I go this way? Do I go that way? Do I really, need to fight this fight, or maybe it's to look within and see what it is about yourself that you're not seeing. It's all tied to that bigger shift in your life. By and large, it is Libra season, so Libra gives you that boost of air. Libra is, speaking of what's right, what's wrong, Libra is something called your ninth sign. So this is the season for you to really look out towards the world, to travel, to explore, to get into themes of philosophy, faith, truth, and meaning. But sometimes we need to be very careful about the proverbial hills that we want to die on, so to speak, because this could be a time where you're asking yourself, is it worth it? Um, Pisces, last but not least. So Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter is presently in Cancer. It'll be in Cancer until I think July of 2026. So it's a water sign. Cancer is a water sign. You're a water sign. So you're in a chapter of your life that's really focused on water, connection, emotionality, bonds, feeling taken care of, feeling nurtured. It's not always so easy, of course, but that's really what the energy wants. The energy wants to feel safe, secure, nurtured, cared for. We should be so lucky. And I said this to Virgo and Sagittarius, and maybe I should have said this to Gemini too. But Pisces, how are you doing? Because there were two big eclipses that we just had. One was on September 7th, it was in Pisces, and the second one was on September 21st, 22nd, and that was in Virgo, your sign of relationships. These two signs, Pisces represents you, or it represents your rising sign if you're Pisces rising. Virgo is your relationship sign. These are two of the two pillars of your life. We have four pillars in total. And when we have eclipses on, two of our pillars, our life is shifting and changing. So where, and maybe you're like, I don't see it, Katie, but where do you see yourself in the spotlight, or life being kind of capital L life at the moment, or relationships really becoming a focal point? Because at least according to the astrology, relationships will be one of your top priorities over this next 6 months. If you're in a relationship, you need to focus on the relationship. If you're not in a relationship, maybe it's about people coming into your life. Maybe it's about looking at connection and socialization, and changing old patterns, for example. But this eclipse was opposite Saturn and Pisces. And so it's really saying to you, Pisces, on some level, that you are stepping up into a 6 month period where more is being asked of you. It could be more responsibility. It could be more maturity. It could be taking on the lead. It could be becoming a parent, or being a parent to yourself, or being a mentor. And it's just for you to see where that is showing up in your life. And so when Saturn is a big part of the mix, we need to heed the call of Saturn. That's just kind of how it works. So it kind of says you've got some work to do over the next 6 months. I know, I'm so sorry, Pisces. I know you've had a couple of years of Saturn in your sign, but use this energy, use it wisely, use it focusedly, if that's even a word, intentional precision, and you clean things out, put things in order, set boundaries. Maybe that's where Saturn is saying, Pisces, set boundaries. But you're like, but I'm a Pisces. But even cells have cell walls, meaning even a cell, which is connected to everything, all the other cells, it has a cell wall. So maybe it's about boundaries. Maybe it's about drawing a line. Maybe it's about saying no to the things that you need to say no to, and yes to the things that you need to say yes to. Maybe you're like, I don't feel like this resonates for me. I don't know, Pisces. But listen, take it in, because as we get down the line, especially as we get towards December, that 3 month mark after the eclipses, maybe you're gonna be like, oh, that's what she was talking about. So that is your look at the astrology of this week. September 29th through October 5th, 2025. So yeah, I gotta figure out what's up with my microphones. We had to switch the audio input and or is it output? But yeah, but thank you all for sticking through it, and I appreciate you all, and I will see you all next week. You can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Spotify. You can book a consultation with me, because of course we need to see where this astrology, where these eclipses are showing up in your life. And maybe I will see you for this weekend intensive in energetic sciences. The link is in the show notes. And again, I am doing a free 1-hour webinar. This will be Wednesday, so in 2 days, October 1st at 12 p.m. Eastern. Again, the link is in the show notes. So I will see you all next week. And until then, take care. Bye-bye.